Utah is a beautiful state with a dysfunctional football team.
Is Real Salt Lake any good?
Hello and welcome to Expected Own Goals. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis. Breaking news. Just before we started recording.
Amy Rodriguez, a.k.a. A-Rod, has gone the way of the dodo.
Fired from the head coaching position of Utah Royals. Goalkeeping coach following suit. The team's president of business operations is being moved, quote, to a new role in the...
Relocated.
Yeah. What do you make of this? Like, obviously the team is hot garbage, but, like, was it really A-Rod's fault?
Yes. And I'll start by saying, obviously it's not exclusively A-Rod's fault. It takes a village to make a team this bad.
Yeah.
But I think A-Rod, more than any other member of Utah's sort of visible staff, was setting expectations for what this team could accomplish and for where this team was going and for how this team would play. And essentially, they have not lived up to any of those expectations.
Right. Expectations that were never reasonable to begin with.
It's a classic example of, overpromise, underdeliver.
Yeah.
And I think that from a leadership position, A-Rod did that as sort of, egregiously as anyone who has ever coached a team in this league.
Yeah. What does give me pause about it and why I don't necessarily think it's the best move for this team right now is that, she was hired by this organization. Why would an expansion club hire a head coach with no previous head coaching experience? The job of being an expansion team head coach is difficult enough, Like, she's not necessarily being put in the best position to succeed. Now, whatever she may or may not have done while in that position, we can say one way or the other. But like David Blitzer and the business operations groups that put her in this position, I don't know if they made the best hire to begin with. And now you're changing horses in midstream when I'm sure the locker room isn't feeling super great about life already. So it just feels like it's a bit too much of a disruption when why not just give yourself the best opportunity to do a good job search in the off season,
Sure. I think that generally speaking, obviously it's the whole organization that's at fault here. I think that for a coach who'd never coached before, the idea of overpromising almost comes with the territory. You're trying to convince, it's essentially you're pitching yourself to do something that you've not done before.
Right.
You're setting yourself up for failure in that sense. That said, I don't think we've seen really, despite the draw with Portland, which I actually think was one of their better performances.
I think that's also what makes all of this a little strange is just the timing of it.
2-11-2.
Sure.
8 points through 15 fixtures.
Yeah. On pace to be one of the all-time worst teams in the league.
It's so far from what A-Rod sort of envisioned that I think this is a really easy firing in my mind.
Sure.
If the question is, did A-Rod underperform the talent she has on hand? The answer is maybe not. But did A-Rod misconceive of and help design a roster that was so untalented as to barely belong in this league?
Yeah,
she's culpable there.
I think it's a very thorny business because, I think you and I would both agree that this is not the head that we thought was going to roll. If a head was going to roll this year, we thought it was Kelly Cousins, sporting director. Whether or not we were correct in that instinct, clearly we ultimately were not correct in that instinct, but whether that instinct was justified or not, it's A-Rod was the first hire months before Cousins came on board. A-Rod was quite involved in player recruitment and in the draft. A-Rod seemed to have the backing of the ownership group, and there had not really been any rumblings that she was in the hot seat. So yeah,
which, by the way, I think is actually a good thing out of Utah.
Sure.
I think more often than not we should actually respect the fact that a coach. We didn't hear hot seat. We looked at the record and thought, why aren't we hearing hot seat? And then the coach was fired.
Right. Right.
You know, like I'm sure there were internal discussions. I can't imagine this is a surprise to anyone, including A-Rod.
Yeah.
About, just the results were atrocious.
Right.
And the play on the field was bad. And, short of Mandy Hott going on a series of heaters at times, like this could have been worse.
Yeah.
Like this team is really bad.
I guess with regard to the question of expectation, though, yes, A-Rod, she said what she said in public to the press, but also it feels as though the ownership group maybe had higher expectations than they should have as well. The idea,
Sure.
like the idea that they would pull the plug this fast, and then you read between the lines of their statement today, which was a masterclass of word salad, which is there was a lot of both lessons and learnings about this season. Makes you wonder if they had maybe set their sights too high. Now, the other possible explanation for all of this is that there is some tension going on behind the scenes between A-Rod and the ownership that we were just not aware of. That kind of gave them the results gave them the excuse. Now, that also may not be true. I don't know. I'm just struck by how many people online have kind of taken A-Rod's side in this. And I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't necessarily think that's wrong. Obviously, it's not completely right either. It's just like I just don't feel like anybody kind of comes out looking good here, except maybe for Cousins, and I'm not even sure that's good either because she was a primary driver in putting the squad together. But also, she's working with the budget that she's provided. As we talked off mic. Real Salt Lake is notoriously a parsimonious on the MLS side, so they clearly did not open up the checkbook and try and spend to the cap the way that Bay FC did. So again, like it's just so much easier for you to be able to do your job as a manager when you have good players, and the best way to get good players is for ownership to allow you and the sporting director to spend the money to get them.
Yeah, and I think the problem here is that A-Rod looked at the players she had and said, "This is good enough, and I am building this team in my image."
Sure, yeah.
Like that these players, like that's, and again, it's like that's the disconnect for me.
Right.
It's like it's not her ability as a talent assessor based on her own words.
Yeah.
Is damning. The on-field performance is damning.
Yeah.
And the lack of adjustments to improve this team, also damning.
Yeah.
And we're coming into an international break where you actually do have time to sort of find someone, rejigger. Like if you're going to make a firing, to me now is a really solid time to make a firing.
It's interesting.
Also, Casey Stoney's available.
Yeah, but again, if you're a parsimonious organization, are you really going to back up the money truck to get her? Because I wouldn't want to move to Sandy, Utah, unless you were paying me a very large sum of money.
I don't know. That area is quite beautiful, but yes, your point is real.
But I mean, here's another possible theory. Like A-Rod, by her own admission, quote, hates to lose. Is it not possible that maybe some of the tension that we're speculating on that was or wasn't there, maybe some of that tension came from her going to Blitzer and being like, you got to give me more money so I can get better players. Like, I'm sick of this shit. And Blitzer was like, no. And so she's like, all right, well then it's this or I walk. And he's like, well, all right, go out the door then.
Bye.
I don't know. I mean, this is all speculation. We don't know.
Again, plausible scenario in my mind.
Yeah.
That said, I would side with Blitzer basically in that moment where it's like, look, you said that this was good enough. You said that these players were good enough. You were the talent assessor here. You really did drive a lot of the player recruitment decisions. Why would I give you more money to be wrong again?
Also very possible. And regardless of whatever we're thinking about whose side anybody wants to take, like when things like this happen, it's the manager who wears it. It's the head coach who wears it.
Yeah, and
because you can't fire the players.
Yeah, because they have good contracts and so on, and you can just buy out the manager. But everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. And this is the first firing to me of the season where I go, yes, makes sense. Can't get worse. Might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mistake is hiring her. The mistake is not firing her now.
Right. Yeah. And certainly the tone and the belief of whether or not this is a good decision contrasts pretty sharply with the Casey Stoney firing.
Yeah, that's
which, like, even since we recorded that episode, like, she released a message on Instagram that heavily implied that, like, someone very close to her in her life had died, like, that same week. And so to pair that with the axe is just brutal. And the way that Jill Ellis talked about it, like, the whole thing is, and again, their position in the table, their position on performances, like, yeah, it's not the same thing. This is, I think I don't think I'm grasping at straws, but I think that I'm just trying to find maybe some nuance where, like, we don't necessarily need nuance. Like, you're 14th in the table, 8 points from 15 games. You don't necessarily deserve to keep your job when the situation is that, regardless of the context or the circumstances.
This isn't exactly like Lane Kiffin getting fired on the tarmac at LAX from USC.
Right.
Like, this isn't one of those.
Or the
the
Michigas with Xavi.
Yeah, Casey Stoney's firing is like that.
Yeah. Or the Michigas with Xavi Hernandez this year at Barcelona. Like, yeah, it's not quite that.
And again, it's these new teams in the league making decisions, having front office shakeup. I'm actually surprised Angel City, a team that probably could use these things, is the lone of the 4 new franchises in recent years to make big midseason shift or have a big personnel change occur.
Yeah, well, my theory about that is just that Becky Tweed has got the ear of Julie Ehrman, so she's fine.
Yeah, I mean, for now. Amy Rodriguez once had the ear of the entire Utah ownership.
Quite true.
All right, let's move on to an ugly reality in San Diego.
Yeah. The Paul Buckle era has arrived.
Yeah, buckle up, indeed. It was a game statey game. I thought, actually, I looked at that initial San Diego lineup and I was like, this is more attacking. I can see what the concept is here. I don't disapprove of the way they're going to go out and try to force the issue in this game. And they did, and they just did it against a team that is so prepared for you to do exactly those things.
Well, especially because, like, that's not Casey Stoney's style. And Buckle actually said to the press that he wanted the team to have a little bit more attacking gumption. He wanted to keep the fullbacks a little bit higher. Playing Jaden Shaw as the proper 10 underneath Alex Morgan is sort of what you want. There was, Savannah McCaskill and Morgan played a little bit of bunch ball, but McCaskill, I thought, actually had a pretty sharp game. But like, regardless of game state, I think even earlier than sort of those latter 15 to 20 minutes after the penalty shank, like, I think in the aggregate, San Diego had the better game, but it didn't matter because they kind of walked into a trap with that Jamise Joseph goal, which really is the goal that kind of defines the whole performance.
Yeah, I think that I felt the first half was pretty even. I thought Chicago did a nice job of absorbing a fair amount of pressure and then picking their places to attack.
Yeah.
They did, not a lot generated beyond the McCaskill miss.
Yeah. That's fair.
Until the own goal.
Yeah.
And again, Mal Swanson was kind of a terror. The own goal is very fluky.
Yeah.
Poor Kaylin Sheridan. But once Chicago gets a lead, they are a really challenging team to play against.
Yeah.
And we saw that, again and again. There is including the VAR check, it's like 2.5 minutes between the Swanson second and the Joseph nail in the coffin third. And San Diego just sort of got punched in the mouth and kind of didn't know what to do about that.
Yeah.
Chicago, Joseph wins the ball and plays one pass to Swanson to score the second goal. And then we don't even require one pass the second time. We require Abby Dahlkemper
just blowing
to
it.
prove why she shouldn't be on the women's national team at the Olympics this summer.
Yeah.
As Janine Joseph, again, with really effective press, just sort of bosses Dahlkemper and then dribbles around Sheridan.
Yeah. Chicago's defense is not built around playing high up and delivering high pressure, obviously. It's not, and they're not even doing Orlando's hybrid press and drop setup.
No.
Like, they really will only press you if they think they can get away with it. and Jameis Joseph got away with it.
Yeah, and again, these were savvy moments that were chosen.
Yeah.
Pouncing on a misplaced touch in the first thing. Whether Joseph committed a foul there or not is a moot point. I don't think it's a foul.
I don't think it is either.
But plays Swanson in. Swanson does Mal Swanson shit and roofs that shot with brutal efficiency. And then, again, it's a route one clearance that comes off a set piece, the second phase of a set piece on the other end of the field. And San Diego just get caught out chasing the game.
Yeah.
This is how Chicago plans to beat you. And when I think about how one wants to execute a game plan to play, you just can't put yourself in these positions against Chicago.
Yeah.
Like you can't be careless at the back. Chicago wants to win the ball and create shots as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You can't let them route one you. And if you can do those things if you can deny those kinds of opportunities, you'll do a decent job shutting down the Red Stars' attack. That said, San Diego, I thought, played a very naive game in that sense. And frankly, most of their best chances come after trailing. I mean, the Morgan penalty, of course, but half of their XG comes down 3-0.
And as you say, that's all game state. But yeah, I mean, they're living like Delkemper and Germa, like their average positioning was at the beginning of the middle third. That's where they were taking most of their touches, which implies, as you say, a very high line. I mean, and also like they were, I think people think that, I mean, I certainly thought this when I started reading about rest defense. Like the phrase rest defense suggests like it is a defensive strategy when you're out of possession to basically like sort of like take breaks from pressure, i.e. rest. But that's actually not what it means. It means it's the rest of the players you're not going to activate in possession basically at any time. So that's why it's that like 3 members of the back line, 2 midfielders structure that stays very compact in order to like prevent the counter and not like get caught too high up because they're getting involved in attacks. But like in possession, they were nominally doing like a rest defense structure, but they were doing it with 4 players. Mm-hmm. Like your center backs are high. Like you kept Kristen McNabb as part of that 3. You used Emily Van Egmond as your midfielder, but then like there was nobody else to partner with Van Egmond. And then again, that's exciting. Clearly it was a deliberate strategy. He didn't play with another traditional central midfielder, but like that fucked him. Paul Buckle, that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be fair to say that the naivete in my mind from San Diego's plan of attack was attempting anything down the middle.
Yeah.
Chicago is just going to slide back into Banks.
Yeah.
And jam up space. There was just very little joy to be found in key central parts of the park. And San Diego, I sort of think, found themselves almost resigned to crossing because there wasn't a lot of there weren't like great passing alternatives. There weren't sequences. There wasn't space to really sort of like finesse the ball through.
Yeah.
Morgan offered very little again.
I actually want to talk about Alex Morgan. Yeah.
Alex Morgan offered very little. Jaden Shaw looked lost.
Well, and then any moment where Jaden Shaw actually showed a little bit of creativity, like somebody bungled it. Like this really was a bit of a shock. So Alex Morgan's dribbling above positional average G+ value for the game was negative 0.63.
Yeah,
which is the lowest dribbling figure for any player this season. And I figured it out why. It comes down to 2 moments. And I even remember noting these 2 moments during the game being like, ooh, that's ugly from Morgan. First one's toward the end of the 24th minute where Shaw wins the ball, does this beautiful half turn to shield herself from the opposing player and move into space. Basically, she's doing Jaden Shaw things. And then she lays off a very nice pass into the box toward Morgan, who's like running from left to right. But then Morgan just sort of like limply sticks her leg out, gets her foot on it, and then just lets it go, rolling out of bounds. And it becomes a goal kick. The other one is at the end of the 85th minute where, there's a really nice passage of play, which ends in basically sort of like a half cut back, half squared ball into the box. And Morgan manages to collect it, and then when she tries to turn and control with her other foot in order to get a shot off, she just completely loses it again, and it dribbles out for a goal kick. Like, these were shocking touches, I must say. You know?
And again, I think that they would not stand out as much to me were they not indicative of a team that had not created very much, and these are squandered chances.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can excuse touches like that in a game from an attacker if you are consistently getting opportunities.
Yeah.
And frankly, San Diego did a nice job. They 47 touches in the box, 11 shots in the box.
Yeah.
It's just so much traffic in the way. And again, those numbers to me are a statement of the way in which Chicago is electing to defend more than they are.
Yeah.
A statement of, San Diego's effectiveness.
Chicago essentially, I mean, it's listed as a 4-3-3, but like in possession, they were playing like a 6-2-2. Like it was so deep. Yeah, so deep and so compact. Like, I mean, they're just doing like sit deep and hit them on the break as well as anybody can, and given the level of talent available to them, that's what they should be doing. I mean, I think we should also note that, San Diego's quote unquote finishing luck was pretty poor. And if some of those chances actually like have just better finishes, like this is a very different narrative. And we don't always think that finishing is a repeatable skill. So, or at the very least, the jury's out on whether it is or not. So,
beyond the McCaskill chance, which would have changed the game, there weren't these like decisive opportunities for Chicago that like where the XG and the eyeball line up and say, or these decisive moments for San Diego where the XG and the eyeball line up and say, maybe that should have turned into a goal.
Well, sure. I mean, no chances that they produced were no doubters. No question about that. Where like a goalkeeper just like made a world-class save or, ball like hit the post by inches or something. No, there were no moments like that. But
and that's been the story of San Diego season. Sorry, just like not creating enough chances to, look, you put up 1.5 non-penalty XG in a game. You shouldn't be totally shocked when you don't score. Like, it doesn't mean you didn't deserve a goal. It's just like not the most shocking outcome. You put up 3 XG in a game, you don't score. That's a shocker.
Yeah.
You put up 1.5 XG in a game. Yeah, maybe the sum total of your chances just didn't render something good. Now, granted, had there been a river instead of a stand behind the goal on Alex Morgan's penalty, we would have had 2 fucking river shots last night. But like, but again, it's like poor Alex Morgan on this one. Just this is not, age is rearing its ugly face, and we are seeing a player who is struggling. And that's not to say that she's totally done. I just think that everything in her trajectory right now is not in her favor for being a reliable goal scorer ever again.
Yeah, I mean, I loath as I am to attach narrative to anything involving this game, but there was something about those 2 really horrible touches in the box and also that penalty shank that just sort of felt like, wow, she's maybe taking this cut from the Olympics roster harder than we anticipated. And maybe that's not true. Maybe she's just 35 and like this is just how things go. That's obviously a much more plausible explanation given what we know about Alex Morgan's mentality. But like the 2 things, even just as correlation and not causation, the vibes were bad. It's been a long time since I've heard Snapdragon Stadium that quiet.
Yeah. Big crowd, quite quiet.
Yeah. Very unusual.
And I sort of felt like we saw I hate to, yeah, we saw crystalline the difference between Mal Swanson and Alex Morgan. People, Alex, we saw Mal Swanson take confident, thorough touches and dispatch half chance with absolute brutal quality.
Yeah.
And we saw Alex Morgan sort of floundering, which is aligned with a lot of what we've seen out of, again, strikers aren't supposed to be good at 35. It's sort of remarkable the level she's still playing at. I actually want to give her credit for that.
Yeah.
It is very, very challenging to maintain a really high level of quality into your mid-30s at that position.
Abby Wambach, who she more or less inherited the striker's job on the U.S. team from, was 35 during the 2015 World Cup, and it showed. It very clearly showed.
There are other players that we could discuss in this game, but I kind of felt like one of the key sort of revelations was the way in which Swanson and the way in which Morgan look in light of what we'd just seen in terms of roster selection for the Olympics.
Yeah.
I also felt like Dahlkemper had a mental boner. That absolutely, if we're going to apply some narrative, could be related to not making that roster.
It's possible. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But it's just dark days in San Diego all around.
Which is just, that's very... You don't want to see the project bust up this quickly. It's only season 3,
Yeah, and I don't think it's like...
Although then again, based on the reviews for the Bear season 3, maybe there's a pattern here.
Yeah. Is it doom and gloom in San Diego right now? Was this the worst loss on paper that they've ever taken against, in their years? Yeah, this is the worst loss that they've never suffered a 3-0 in dignity at home.
They've never suffered a negative three goal difference. They've never suffered ever.
Yeah, and you peel back the numbers a little bit more, and suddenly it's like not so bad. But this is a bad result in the 3-year history of the San Diego Wave,
particularly given their reputation.
Exactly, and seems, I think that the trouble with being more attacking, and the thing that if this is the approach going forward, it's the personnel. Casey Stoney, I think, had a really good read on. She just didn't have a ton of attacking talent to intermix. And so played a more conservative game. And what we saw, in Friday's game between San Diego and Chicago was the downside of committing more numbers forward against a team that will punish that, and against a team that is going to take their handful of chances and turn them productive.
Right.
Brutal.
Yeah. It's difficult to know how they move forward, frankly.
This is another 3 points that Chicago gets to bank and that solidify their run at the playoffs. This game didn't convince me that they're any better. I don't think I learned, I don't think I was convinced that this is a better Chicago team. That said, if they keep banking points in level XG or within an XG, games, this is going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be an annoying team to try to get out.
Yeah, deeply so.
Yeah, like frankly, Lauren Donaldson, maybe we transition here to some quick hits, but like coach of the year, Lauren Donaldson.
If they make the playoffs, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, who's your NWSL coach of the year right now?
Yeah, I think that if Donaldson gets the Red Stars to the playoffs, I think he's the pretty obvious choice. It's the weirdest award, right? Because we don't have good ways to quantify a manager's performance. So generally it just goes to the person who gets the team into the playoffs and whose team that they took over had the worst season from the year before, and that's Chicago to a T. Coach
of the year might as well just be called the anti-Amy Rodriguez, where it is you underpromised and over-delivered.
No, I think also, I think Seb Hines and Vlatko Ananovsky have a pretty good case for the job too.
Yeah, I'd say that Seb Hines is my coach of the year if I had to offer it right now. Again, I think we underestimated we knew that there was a lot of talent that needed to come into place, but I look at what individual players on Kansas City are doing, and some of that is Vlatko putting them in the right position, but I see Seb Hines' defensive solidity and still their potency going forward. And I'm just like really, really impressed with the way Orlando play.
Yeah, totally.
So he would be Seb Hines would probably be my coach of the year.
Yeah.
Is he yours, or are you taking Blacko?
I think so. I think it will come down to Ananovsky or Donaldson, because they both took over teams this year who were really bad last year, and they'll both probably go to the playoffs, and that's just kind of how coach of the year narrative works. But I think the actual answer, particularly when you want to advocate for the concept of like a long-term project, then Hines has got to be your guy.
Absolutely. All right, next up, your MVP of the season.
Midseason MVP is it's Chewinga.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a Chewinga who is not really outperforming her XG. I think, she just creates so many chances.
Yeah.
She is, and we saw this in Houston, she is legitimately terrifying to game plan and defend against. What we had imagined as potentially like a tough single skill set, I think we've seen more technical ability than I had anticipated from her. Yeah. More trickiness. In addition, she's clever, in addition to just being an Olympic dead sprinter. And the way in which she rounded Jane Campbell for her third, she's just making good choices.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said this early on in the season when it was becoming evident what she was. Like, the thing that makes the pace work, because I was initially skeptical that the pace would get solved by defenses, like the thing that has allowed it to continue being such a lethal tool is her off-ball movement and her ability to take such incredibly tight and crisp first touches when she does receive. Like, it is, she's got a big football brain, and she's got incredible technical ability. And therefore, you can't really game plan against the pace, because she knows when to slow down. She knows when to put on the acceleration. She knows where to actually be on the field in order to make sure that she can outrun you. Like, it's all there.
I saw this tweet of Kim McCauley's, and I just thought, this is so on it. The narrative this sort of one of the big trends that's shown up in the NWSL this year is just women from non-traditional African powers coming into this league with, and just taking it by storm. And it's not like Chewinga has been sort of a surprise. Banda, less so. We've seen Banda do this, at the Olympics. But there is potentially so much talent out there to go hunt and find that you just start wondering when you see Banda and Chewinga take the league by storm, like, what else is out there?
Yeah.
If we were to just be paying slightly better attention.
Teams scouting and recruitment departments are bigger and better funded than they used to be, and the salary cap allows you to go spend the money to get players like that. So it's a wonderful confluence of factors.
All right, Evan, my next category for you. Actually, we should talk about other potential MVPs. Barbara Banda. Any others?
Obviously Banda. Yeah. Trinity Rodman. I think. It's just. I mean, Croy Bethune is going to win Rookie of the Year, but she should get MVP votes.
Yeah, like that's actually that's my hot take. I was very happy to pick Croy Bethune to win Rookie of the Year before the season, but I think she's like an outside candidate for.
How fun would it be for this league to have a Fred Lynn, or a Dustin Pedroia or an Ichiro Suzuki win Rookie of the Year and MVP same season?
It's I think it should potentially happen. I think Croy Bethune has been absolutely electric. And
it's nice, It's nice to have a non-forward in the mix for it, too.
I said this on the ASA Slack. I'm just so glad she went third to Washington and not first to Utah. Because
so true.
Because Croy Bethune's been an absolute revelation. I think, very quietly, Sophia Smith is still having a very nice season. She probably deserves... We shouldn't, overlook that, but she's not right now playing at the level of everyone else we've just listed.
Yeah.
Not to say that she doesn't have the ability, but she's there. All right, your rookie of the year.
Well, we just
Croy
said
Bethune.
it's Bethune.
Beyond
Yeah.
Croy Bethune. Yeah, your non-Croy Bethune rookie of the year.
Non-Bethune. Ooh, God.
I think mine's Claire Hutton.
Yeah, I like that shout. It gets pretty thin after Bethune because Sentner has not. I mean, she hasn't been unplayable, but she has not been able to produce. Savannah King's been a flat-out disaster. Maybe
Tough.
Hal Hirschfeld. Maybe I'd throw Hal Hirschfeld in there.
It really is Bethune's, but beyond that, I think actually we've seen some really nice non-college players
Yeah.
sort of emerging. I do worry for the long-term health of the college game.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems
Yeah.
like if you're 18 and ready, college is, with the increasing professionalism of this league, is
Yeah, what's
not
the point?
necessarily the way to go.
If you can walk into the starting 11 of the best team in the league like Claire Hutton did at the age of 18, then yeah, what's the point?
Give me your 8 playoff teams.
Kansas City, Orlando, Washington, Gotham, Portland, North Carolina, Chicago, and Louisville.
I will agree with that first 6. So Kansas City, Orlando, Washington, Gotham, Portland, North Carolina. I worry that Louisville is not taking advantage of this like sort of soft point of their schedule, and some of
Yeah.
that's heat related, but
Yeah.
I'm starting
It's
to
fair.
get a little worried. Yeah. Obviously they're very good. I am low-key actually okay with the idea that Bay might sneak in.
I mean, that
And
would
cr-
be wild. That
and
would
Bay,
be
yeah,
really
no,
wild.
for all they're sort of just figuring they're just being less self-destructive than they were.
Being less self-destructive and like they're hanging around. And for again, in a 14-team league with 8 playoff spots, like that could be enough.
They are hanging around, and I think Chicago is the team that I would normally bounce from here, but they just keep finding ways.
Yeah.
I'll take Bay over Louisville in that last
Fair.
playoff spot. All right, your league champion, your Shield winner.
Kansas City. They're just so, again, we've said this before, like their ceiling is just so high right now that even if they regress, they're still going to be fine.
Yeah, they're even if they lose to Orlando coming up, like they just have so much firepower. I think they can run over teams.
Yeah.
And your cup winner.
I was a little bit more confident about this earlier in the season, but now just to win 3 games of knockout football, you can be a really grubby team and do that. So I don't know. I actually don't think I want to answer. I think it's just way too up in the air.
Yeah, I would agree that it's up in the air. I'm just going to stick with Gotham. I've been
It's fair.
stuck with Gotham the whole way. I continue to think that they're putting together very solid, if unspectacular, performances that, you know, they're just, they don't put a lot of clunkers out there. Again, it's like a healthy Rose Lavelle makes a difference. And it's just the talent line. And frankly, of teams that I think could beat Kansas City right now, it's kind of just Orlando and Gotham for me.
Mm.
Just in a matchup situation. That said, we've got a lot left to go. Who's been, and I think this is a good way to, stats aside, who has been your favorite team to watch this year?
Favorite team to watch? I think maybe I'll go with Washington.
Yeah, that's my answer
that.
too. I sort of don't.
I mean, it's so tough. I mean, those top 3 are just riotously entertaining.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, it's really hard to choose, but I think I kind of enjoy Washington's version of, you know, transition blitz because they can do it in numbers in a really cool way.
Yeah, I kind of don't know how Jonathan Heraldez like makes this team a lot better.
Well, you think he said, like, I'm not expecting to change really much of anything.
Yeah.
I just want them to get a little bit better every week. We're not going to try and reinvent the wheel, which that's a smart goddamn answer from someone who is like trained in a very specific style of play
Agreed.
his entire professional life.
Yeah, I think to give it a different answer, obviously Kansas City, Orlando, watching good teams win is fun. I've enjoyed watching Louisville a lot for long stretches of the year. Deeply frustrating, but intermittently very entertaining as a team.
Yeah, I think the frustrations that have popped up in the last 7 or 8 games, and then just the conditions under which they've had to play in the most immediate couple of fixtures have taken the shine off of them for me a little bit. And that's not totally their fault. It's just my own subjective POV.
Were I a Louisville fan, they would be my least favorite team to watch this year. But because I am not a Louisville fan, I've really enjoyed it. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to cover in the midseason?
Yeah. No, I think that was pretty good. You know who else is pretty good? Expected Own Goals.
And some other podcasts too. But yes, Expected Own Goals. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Please follow us, rate us, review us wherever you get podcasts. Tell all your friends about us. Rate us 5 stars if you are going to rate us at all. Follow us on social media at XOwnGoals. That's the letter X Own Goals. And if you believe that we've made an own goal,
surely we have.
Please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com.